has been through with us already. So unless there's any burning questions, I would move straight to recommendations.
What sort of burning did you have in mind?
How burning do you've got a question?
Oh, I've got a question. What has Hastings done, if anything?
Oh, yes, they're having a chat, aren't they?
Yeah, so Hastings District Council had their council meeting on the 22nd of June last week, and I understand that they unanimously adopted the same sorts of recommendations that you have before you today.
Okay. That's Napier and Hastings now.
Napier and Hastings have now adopted that stuff. Just while I've got the microphone, perhaps what I can highlight is that following the workshop we held last week, recommendation 7 has been added in an effort to try and capture some of the sentiments. I'm happy for you to add to it, modify it, tweak it, but certainly recommendations 1 through to 6 are one and the same as what Hastings and Napier councils have already adopted for themselves.
What page is the recommendations at?
33. The additions on 33.
Well, when you're ready, Chair, I'm happy to move.
Do you want to go?
There may be some questions.
So is Councillor Bevan happy with this?
No, definitely
I think
not.
this is
I'm opposed
very
to it.
serious.
It is. There's absolutely nothing. Having read now in more detail the basis for this report, I feel even less comfortable than I did a week ago, and I will be opposing this. I think the only sane thing that we can do as a council is to propose some changes to this strategy. It's wrong. It's fundamentally wrong. It's flawed, in fact, in my view.
Mr. Chair? Yeah, that would be the Maori view as well.
That's the Maori view as well. Can we just take some time? I'm quite interested, and I think the rest of the councillors would be, why you're saying that and why you're saying that. So can you tell me?
I'm happy to do so, Chair. So the purpose of the strategy is to anticipate population levels and the type of population we're going to have so that suitable housing opportunities can be found. And alongside that, the purpose of the strategy is to avoid putting houses in the future on productive and versatile soils. The problem is this strategy achieves none of that. And, you know, I've sat here for my lifetime watching Hastings just expand its boundaries, go out, not up. And in my lifetime, I've seen 2,000 hectares of land taken for that. And the problem for Hastings is you can't go anywhere around the edges of Hastings without taking valuable and versatile soil. And if you have a look at the map on page 284 of the attachments, you can see there all of the blue designated areas are either about to be taken or have been taken. So this is just more of the same. There's no intent to change the strategy at all, so far as I can see. And sorry, 264. Sorry, of the attachments. I'm sorry.
Can I have a look at that map, please? Oh, no, the other one.
One of the problems is that there is never a shortage of willing sellers, and if any of you had a look at the submissions to this HPUD's process, there are literally dozens of people lining up to sell their good land because it's worth 3 times more
It's the nature
for
of capitalism.
subdivisions than it is for a farm. But that doesn't make it right at all. So I continue to be really concerned about this, and this is a strategy that was, I think, introduced in 2010. Is that correct? Okay, so theoretically there's been 7 years since this started to 2017, and you know there's this graduated intent to move from greenfields developments to intensification within the existing boundaries. But if you have a look at what's happened over the last 7 years, you will find, my guess is 90% of all new sections made available are greenfields developments. And even looking at the population stats and how they're going to change, and the fact that there needs to be in the future 30 to 40% of the housing for the elderly who don't want quarter acre sections, they want more intensive smaller holdings. This report says, oh, that's going to have to be greenfields. So the pressure on further greenfields developments is just going to get worse. So I'm completely opposed to the notion that this needs to be a 30-year time frame to achieve, because I don't believe that the councils will do anything about it unless they're forced to do anything about it. That's a real problem. I think they've totally underestimated the number of sections that are currently available. And I don't see any strategy outlined here that's going to protect the soils that we all need to be concerned about. So I don't see how any sane person can support this strategy. It's nuts.
Mr. Mohi, from the Maori perspective.
Yes, well, in supporting that, I've said to some of my Māori colleagues in Heretaunga, you jump up and down about the rivers, about bloody riparian strips, etc., and there the land, the beautiful land, is getting covered with buildings and concrete. So we need to get our facts straight and our priorities straight, because it's beautiful land, and it's just if Councillor Bevan in his lifetime 2,000, well, probably in my lifetime it's 4,000.
Do you have a view on this too?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I really do share Councillor Bevan's sentiments on this, and the area that Councillor Bevan has taken the position around the utility of productive land. My concern rests around the environmental impacts that the plans as stated are clearly going to have, and I go back to the one of the attachments at page 294 of the plan, and you see a huge industrial estate opposed right smack in association with the Ahuriri estuary. And I don't know if you've seen that one. So it's an area beyond, adjacent to State Highway, Prebenson Drive, and beyond Tamatea. And so what we've got is, Mr. Chair, is a plan and a process which is delivering very drastic environmental outcomes. We've got a heavy industrial zone right next to one of the most sensitive environments in the country. I'm staggered that we are thinking like this, and that this council, which has an environmental mandate, is quite comfortable to go along. And I appreciate the arguments for our continued involvement of HPUDs, and I appreciate the argument that says let's get inside it and change the strategy if that's what we want to do. Better be in the tent than out. But the other side of that coin is, where does our regulatory, are we compromising our regulatory role and our advocacy for the environment when we are in the tent, and we ought to be, if you like, stand alone and stand apart from these developments? I mean, we ought to be opposing that with nail and claw. The whole notion of continued expansion and urbanisation, industrialisation of that zone is surely an anathema to this council.
So, before I come to both you two, can you stay in the tent and oppose this? And
I think you can. You can express some concerns about, well, it would be more helpful to express concerns about particular issues or elements of it rather than throwing baby out with the bathwater altogether.
can we technically not accept this and stay on the tent. While you're thinking about that, was it Alan and then, yeah, you, Paul?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I have to go back to basics and remind the council that this was an attempt to rationalise the process of development on the Heretaunga Plains, to provide for sheep and grapes and apples and also people. And in providing for people, the intention was to recognise that there needs to be a shift towards greater intensification in housing development, and that is happening. It's happening on a large scale at the moment. You see all the infill that's going on around Taradol at the moment. And at the same time to place logical boundaries around the two cities that were designed to ensure that drainage and other infrastructure was appropriate, that transport links were appropriate, and that as much as possible to preserve versatile soils. And all of this involves some degree of compromise, but I believe the compromise that's been reached is a very logical one, and it's one that's been worked through very, very carefully with expert advice and with transparent, open consultation with the communities and the consideration of multiple submissions on 2 occasions now. And to not the effect of not accepting this, and incidentally, I'm quite happy with 7.2, and I would note that in regard to natural hazards, the plan does already provide for those to be considered, but again at the higher global level than district plans themselves are required to do. But to not accept this, I think would be a terrible pity. It's really saying that all the work that all these people, staff, elected members and so on did was totally wrong and should not be respected. And also I believe is an impotent move, because Napier and Hastings will simply just carry on and do their developments in accordance with the plan. We don't determine subdivisions. They do. They must do them within the boundaries that are established by HPUDs within the contained compact city areas. So, quite honestly, turn this down, then we're really not achieving anything much other than the fact that we're no longer a player, whereas we have been.
Mr. Chairman, can I perhaps just reaffirm the fact that this is a non-statutory document, so it doesn't have any impact in terms of any resource management decisions that might be made. Where it gets to have status is when there's a plan change gets put forward by, for example, Napier City Council for that industrial land, or Hastings District Council for rezoning of land there as well. And that's where not only does it have status, but we then have status to ensure that the environmental concerns and any other concerns that we may have around transport links or other factors we can submit on those, and that's the place where we can actually have some impact on some of those specific and important concerns that this council has. And follow that through, if necessary, all the way through to obviously any Environment Court decision.
The other thing, Mr. Chairman, is that we have already got a plan change on our books that recognises the 2010 resolutions of HPADs. So we don't accept it. What do? We try and unwind that and take it off our books.
Can I just ask as a follow-up question to Liz, if we adopt this and then want to oppose what the councils proceed to do, aren't we weakening our hand?
No, I don't think we are. I mean, these particular areas, and I'm looking at this map here. So blue for the blue for residential, orange for industrial. Those are indicative areas, and they still have to go through a process of being deemed to be suitable. And I'm looking at this map right now, and I'm thinking, well, that might have been drawn last year, but you know, I'm looking at further industrial development along Omahu Road, and actually, how's that going to impact on drinking water supplies over the aquifer? You know, so there's always new issues that are going to come up that we're going to have to consider when there's a specific location being looked at for a specific new activity.
If you take my motion, I'll explain why we should support this, Chair. Because we're having the debate first.
No, but it was so important, I just thought we should really
Well,
get this out so we can understand which way we're going to go. I mean, could we understand?
well, it's democracy, so some are going to go against and some will be for, and if the fors are more than the against, Chair, it goes through. It's quite simple.
No, it's not, because it is simple, but I do want everyone to know the gravity. You know, I'm inclined to agree that we should stay in the tent, but I agree with Peter's assertions that a lot of this is just nonsense, what is happening. So I kind of would like to get a good feel for that before we do go to the motion and then have to vote it down or vote it. We haven't got our thinking right. So I know I'm workshopping this, but I do want to do it. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. This question has come to mind, given Mike's comments. It would seem to me that this is a quasi-planning sort of document, and I'm just wondering why it wasn't passed through RPC, because it all sort of ties in with that, and how that fits with their statement of intent.
I'm happy to respond to that. So HPADs as a strategy, and what its 2016 revision sets out is a whole bunch of actions that are way more than just RMA planning interventions, way more than just district plans and regional policy statements and regional plans. So that takes it immediately beyond the regional planning committee's terms of reference as they stand at the moment. But it doesn't take it beyond this council's wider mandate. It gets into flood control, drainage works, sort of operational activities, land transport planning activities. Yeah, sure, regional plan actions, but it's certainly not confined to just what the regional planning committee terms of reference is focused on at the moment.
So, sorry, just to follow up from that. So what what I heard from that was that some of the HPADs document could fall under what would be regional planning committee, but a lot of it doesn't.
If and when those actions came to be followed through on, implemented, yeah, some things would be
This one.
for the regional planning committee to kick around in future.
Yeah.
Yep. And then other things might be for the land transport committee or environment and services committee.
Okay. Right. Yep.
Okay, Fenton, I'll take your motion.
I move, Chair.
Yes.
Mr Chairman, I wonder whether...
Do we have a seconder? Oh, we've got a motion on the table now, Neil. Do we have a seconder? Alan seconders. Do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly before we get an amendment. I think if we turn away from this now, it's not so much lost opportunity, but it's actually, do we really care about the issues that we're saying we do care about? And I understand what everyone's saying and generally support. But if we, in the tent, out of the tent, I mean, that's getting a bit antiquated. I'm going to suggest if we vote with this now, we will own the tent. It'll be our tent, because the issues that have been raised here are so huge and have not been addressed. The mandate of the Regional Council needs to be reinforced, reinvigorated, if you like. And if we support this today, the issues that have been raised are going to be front and centre going forward. If we don't support this, really, what are we achieving? Nothing, in my view. So I'm more than happy to support these recommendations as they sit here with the additions. There may be an amendment coming, and that's fine. But if we turn this down today, actually, are we really standing up for the issues that we have portrayed here? And I don't think we are. We need to be not so much in the tent, we need to own the tent. It'll be our tent, everyone, going forward.
Thank you, Finn. Alan? No, Neil.
Well, Mr. Chair, if I could indulge the mover and seconder to just make an amendment to recommendation 7, and I'm suggesting it becomes 7.13, wording to the effect that reprioritise strategy implementation planning to recognise the urgency of ensuring environmental effects are central to planning.
Happy with that.
Is that something you could... So essentially saying that reprioritise strategy implementation, that is 7.1, and adding 7.13, recognise the urgency in ensuring environmental effects are considered in all planning.
More than happy with that.
We don't need to move if you just accept that. Yeah. Do you accept that, Alan? I wish to speak on this too. I completely understand what Neil and Peter are talking about here. You know, that we've been out of control for years on these issues. And we've all probably been a little bit involved, certainly I have been. And we need to call a halt to it, not just on the environmental issues, but on the taonga, which is our land, our good soils, which our region depends on. Both cities depend on it. So, but I just can't see, it was set through the media, how we can argue that if we're out of the tent. So we need to be in there, and we need to be much more assertive than we have been, because I accept what Neil's saying about industrial development on the Ahuri estuary. I accept what Peter's saying about movement onto our Class 14 soils. But I do think, personally, and listen to all the arguments, that we should stay in the tent and effect change from within the tent. Peter?
Thank you. I'm going to oppose the motion. I hear all the arguments about continuing to participate in owning the tent, apparently, but there is no point in owning a tent that's full of holes. It's not much of a tent, and that's the problem with this particular tent. In addition to the problems with it that I raised before, it does nothing to address the issue of land banking. It's done nothing to sort out the tomato mushrooms problem. There are so many issues here that this strategy simply doesn't deal with, and the councils are incredibly lazy. They will just take the easy option for the next 30 years. Mark my words, that's what will happen. We need to fire a shot across their bows so that they take the whole business of protecting our valuable soils seriously. And if we don't take the opportunity to take a shot across their bows, they'll just keep doing what they've been doing for all of my lifetime, and they'll just keep taking that valuable land. Nothing will change.
Just for the members of the public information, I don't have a vote on this.
Thank you, Chair. Again, another one of those fascinating debates we're having around the table, which I really enjoy being part of. I've got to say, with this particular issue, I'm a little bit disappointed because it is a that it hasn't been passed either through the RPC or through the Māori Standing Māori Committee for comment, because I think, given Mike's comments, there are some concerns of tangata whenua around the HPUD strategy, and I think it would have been helpful in terms of my decision-making process to have got that feedback from those August bodies, because I think that's, to me, that's one of the purposes they've been for. I totally get that it may not be correctly in scope for what the RPC is doing, but I don't think that should preclude us from making use of that committee as a resource and getting that sort of feedback, because again, I'd like to say, I think it helps me with my decision making. I get both but I get both sides of the argument, and all I can say is that the only tent that I use is when I go camping with my kids, not one particularly, for appropriate decision making purposes.
Neil.
Well, Mr. Chair, I'm in somewhat of a conundrum on this, but I guess I'm buying into the tent argument. Having said that, and in supporting it, it's really to send a message to everyone around this table, including staff, is that over the development of HPUD since 2010, I don't know, I haven't taken enough notice of it, and I kick myself for that, but maybe our voice wasn't strong enough, vigorous enough, and we weren't robust enough and jumped up and down in the tent and made it shake somewhat, because we've ended up with plans that are just looking woeful from our perspective as an organisation. And if you think about the impact, for example, of the area in blue around Parklands, or the area in orange, beyond Prebenson Drive, what you've got is a huge conflict of interest by the Napier City Council, who are drawing those plans up, own that land there, are property developers and pursuing it with great gusto and at great profit, at the compromise of a most significant environmental asset, and that's the estuary. So, we've over that 7 odd years of the HPUD's development, we've had those in the tent really peeing in it. The consequences there of those two developments, I think we ought to be fighting tooth and nail to prevent any further development north of Prebenson Drive. It just shouldn't take place. The consequences, if you think about what was done around Parklands, there's no consideration of the stormwater discharge from a terribly influential part of the city. It just is flushed straight out to the estuary. And now we're going to have an industrial zone there with those implications of industry taking place much closer to the estuary. We must have a solution to that we've got other options. We shouldn't be doing that. And I'm just hoping that a presence in HPUD can express that very vigorously. The alternative is to stand outside it and throw stones at it. Maybe we'll give it a go for a little longer and try it, but we ought to have a bottom line while we're there.
No more comment. Finn, do you want to wind up?
Oh, just very quickly, Chair. There's been a lot of sense spoken around the table today by everyone, actually, and if this was the absolute vehicle to tidy all this up, it would be, but it's not. I do think, though, however, there has been some recent developments in Hawke's Bay that lend to a more, if you like, focused view on certainly the environmental aspects. And one is drinking water. We can't, we've got to make sure we get this stuff right. So if industrial developments are going to have an adverse effect on the environment, it's actually a bit more skin in the game now than there has been in the past, and a lot more focus. So I'm happy to support this. I will also support, though, going forward, that we are a little more vocal and are a bit more vigorous and rigorous in our discussions with our TA partners.
Okay. Just remember we're doing all 1 to 7, and it's 7.23 is the new one which Councillor Curtin put in, environmental aspects. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Is that, do you want division? Call for division. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. What's that?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I wish to tender my resignation from the working group, because I'm afraid I could not honestly reflect in there the views of the dissenting parties. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, now that you have voted, can I just update you, thanks to Leanne, but the Regional Planning Committee councillor did consider this back in February. So just so.
Who are our, before we move to the next paper, it's you, Alan, on HBUDs, and who else?
Tom Belford
On Tom Belford.
and yourself.
And myself. Don't recall ever getting an invitation. Well, I am actually excited. I do want to get involved in this. So, because I agree with all these points that have been put up. So, okay, we have to find another person, do we? And can someone tell me when the meetings are on? That'll be a good thing. Okay, we'll deal with that. Move to item 9. Now that is you, Liz, is it?
It is, Mr. Chairman, it is. Thank you. And it's also Mr. Olsen, our ICT
Mr.
manager. We have a PowerPoint presentation to give you, which is basically a summary of the business case. Now, we're in your hands as to whether or not you wish us to proceed through that, or if you wish us to do just a much...
No, I think we should.
Good.
How long is it?
9 slides?
9 slides? Good.
Yeah, actually.
Okay, let's go.
Right, there's number 1. We can flick through that, Carl. And actually, we can probably just about flick through number 2, but just so there you go. We're down 2 already. We're going well. You go.
Okay, so the agenda today is 2 key things. Obviously, the business case, which has been circulated.
Microphone, please, Carl.
Circulated to the council, and also we'll just run through a brief project background, just so there's some context around where this business case has come from and how we've gotten to this point in the process.
So I'm just going to cover the business drivers, and now that you'll be aware that I've now have management responsibility for consents and compliance, which is really why I've taken this particular topic up. And so I've come to it reasonably late, but I've always been aware of this. But I think it's nevertheless it's sort of, my responsibility to really decide what to present what the business drivers are. And the first one of those is really outdated technology platform. We've got about between 15 and 20 databases that we operate, and they've largely been developed in-house, and they're very much dependent on 1 or 2 key staff remaining with council to be able to maintain them, and quite often there may be conflict in the information that's on those. So it's actually trying to ensure, give confidence in the information that we provide. The second key driver is increasing expectation from all of us that we're able to transact business 24/7 and often from these or the equivalent. So at the moment we don't have that capability. But what we wanted to do with a new resource management information system is to provide that to people. So the focus there is on customer service, and what's intended is, you know, there's up there the type of examples of transactions that could take place, including applying for or renewing resource consents online, eventually being able to pay rates directly online, request information, and certainly for us to be able to undertake public consultation online. We have an increasing demand for a modern integrated system, and we have a number of complex issues that we're dealing with, and those will only increase as we look to particularly undertake our business under the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management. We have some complicated or some major plan changes coming up, Plan Change 6, which we've already gone through, the tank process. Between 2019 and 2023, we have a huge bulge of resource consent renewals, largely for water takes, so that impacts on both our staffing requirements and generally the information systems that we currently operate under. Compliance monitoring, well, we were talking in the previous item briefly about drinking water, and certainly one of the lessons that we have learnt from the Havelock North drinking water contamination is the need for us to have more diligent monitoring, to have better records around our monitoring, and to be able to respond more quickly when an issue arises. So that's certainly another key driver for us, and I've previously mentioned the online services. And finally, pressure on staffing requirements. The consents function that we have can be a little bit wavy in terms of our needs for staff, depending on the number of consents we have. We are always driven by the applications that have been received. But as I've indicated, the new consent or the renewal of consents that's coming up, the increased compliance, all leads us towards anticipating an increase in staffing. And one of the things that we're looking for a resource management information system to do is to assist staff to carry out their roles more productively, more efficiently, and by that case, in that case, actually look at helping us to avoid costs of future staffing requirements.
Bit of a project background, starting from the procurement process, which kicked off in August 2016. We brought together an RFP document that, rather than prescribing functional requirements, was more of a vision outcome document. So we wanted to see what options were available in the market that could really meet the big picture ticket items, not how do we perform that process on this day in this way, which led to the development of a real vision outcome-centric RFP document. We put that RFP out to the open market through the government tender site called GETS, and we ended up with 5 respondents to that RFP. 2 of those respondents were shortlisted and subsequently presented locally to a relatively large and broad HBRC evaluation team. Post presentations, there were site visits to both Waikato and Tauranga to have a look at both of the shortlisted options running within production regional council environments. And it gave our teams, which included people from the consents from the compliance teams, an opportunity to talk to their peers and really get under the hood and see how these systems had impacted their productivity. Correct, yes. And as a result of that evaluation process, we selected RSHL and Datacom with a product called Iris as the preferred product or vendor to proceed forward with, scope it around that option, put together pricing around that option, and also resourcing requirements.
So can I just ask, how many systems did you actually test drive, or did our staff test drive?
As far as what systems options there are in the market, there is only 2 options in the New Zealand regional sector market that are mature enough to put into a production environment. One of those has 3 production sites, and the other, which is Iris, has 6 production sites.
Was there much difference in cost, or?
Very little.
Thank you. That kind of Councillor Bevan's line of questioning sort of brings the one I had to mind was that you put this particular thing out for tender. You had 5 respondents, yet I don't see in the paper any involvement of the tenders committee. I would have thought that would have been an opportunity for. I mean, it's not an insignificant amount of money. So if someone could just explain to me why that particular process wasn't made use of.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. Yeah, what we have here is if an amount is in an annual plan, which this is, delegations from the council to officers are up to 400,000. If it goes over 400,000, then it goes to the tender committee, and we use that for things like biosecurity or engineering contracts. In this instance, we have the full business case coming back to council. So what we have done is elevated it to a full council presentation with a business case on benefits and how we evaluated and what systems were out there. So you get the full go. So the tenders committee in this instance wouldn't be involved.
Can I just add that when the funding for this was consulted on last year, staff undertook to bring back to council the business case. So that was our rationale for bringing it like this to all 9 of you.
Yeah, maybe it's just an inherent challenge I have with that particular process, but at the end of the day, we've been offered in this particular paper a choice of either accepting the provider that that you guys have shortlisted, which is maybe a perfectly legitimate choice to make, or keeping the current system. We haven't. I would have considered that a tenders committee would have perhaps had a view on the other providers that have put their names forward in terms of tenders. And it may well be that they've come up with the same conclusion. And I've got no problem with that. But it seems to me it's an awful lot of money. And I know it's been through the process. So the money's been approved, but it's the vendor itself. The decision around the vendor is the one where I think we should have perhaps gone to a wider group than just bringing a business case to council, which gives us either that option or no option.
I think, Councillor, probably the response to that would be that this is actually an incredibly complex product that we're looking to purchase. And I mean, I myself would not even consider myself to be part of a specific evaluation team. I don't have the in-depth knowledge around how the system should work. And so the process that was chosen was to actually engage the people sitting down the back of the room here, the end users, who are the ones that need to work with it, and they're the ones that provided the expert input into the evaluation process on all of our behalf.
Look, I'm not doubting that at all. I think that's a really robust thing to do. I think that's the right thing to do to get the feedback from the end users, because that should be part of that process that's going through. But yeah, that's okay. I'll leave it there.
Got 3 little questions, Chair. First one is around the Regional Software Holdings Limited. Why are we not part of that?
Well, I'm not sure why we were never. I don't know.
We didn't get the
ever
nod, is that
invited
what
or
I'm
not.
hearing?
Paul, you might be able to answer that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of history to that. We could have been party to that. There was 6 councils come together to develop resource management software. They had to, because the systems that they had the same system, and it wasn't being supported. We were in the fortunate position of having a system developed in-house that didn't need to be transitioned away from. We had our staff at that time look at the functionality of our current system vis-a-vis the functionality of the developed system, and at that time they felt that we would stay with our own system. We have avoided a lot of cost in the development of that system. We have avoided a lot of heartache going through 2 or 3 years of development.
That's my next question. So you've answered why we're not part of it. Second question was, in regard to the system we're talking about here, does it talk to these regional councils? Can we comparatively see how we're doing, that sort of thing?
We have been pushing, with discussions to date with RSHL, that integration across the councils is key as a future roadmap item. We already have the ability, by going with Iris, to have some level of sharing, particularly from a central government reporting perspective. Because 7 systems are architected the same, the reporting requirements can be done once and applied to the 7 organisations. So there is certainly efficiencies to be gained in that space, but at this stage they're not fully integrated systems, but it is certainly a future state that we'd anticipate getting to.
And last question, Chair, and we seem to do this all the time with ICT systems, does it talk to any of the other territorials in this region? Or are they using something totally different, or something that will not ever be able to talk to anything that we do?
There's 2 parts to the answer I'm going to give you. One is no, the system won't talk to the TLA systems at this point in time. Part 2 is it could. And we're also working on a parallel project in the ICT team to put in what we call an integration platform.
Supplementary, Chair, do the other regionals use it in that way? Do they use it to talk to their TAs?
No, they don't.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I take you to page 12 of the business case? And I just wanted to traverse with you. Firstly, who owns the IP? Is it the group, the collective? Is it?
RSHL, yes.
Yes. And they charge us a licence fee to operate.
Correct.
And that's $172,000.
Correct.
Can you tell me what our current operating licensing costs are, please?
Free.
So we don't currently charge any licensing costs. Moving to infrastructure services, you've got $41,000. This is a substantial ongoing annual cost, and I'm a little bit worried about that. 41,000. What does that buy?
So if you recall, a little over a year ago, we put up a presentation around moving our infrastructure to the cloud, out of resilience, potential cost savings in the future. That is the cost of hosting the computers, the servers required to operate the system. That is the cost of running those in the cloud.
And again, is there a current cost of that? Do we operate any systems in the cloud other than the fog around this table?
There is little to no cost for infrastructure for the current system.
So we're going to incur this $200,000 additional cost ongoing.
Correct.
Okay. Can I now go to the capital one-off, and I note the internal time 405,240. If it's internal, are we taking on additional staff to do this as a part of the process? Is that how that's going to work?
The approach we've decided to take is to backfill up to 5.5 FTEs across the duration of the project, to either participate in the project or to backfill consents and compliance and IT staff to give them the time they need to deliver on this project without interrupting business as usual.
So you're just capitalising that time?
Correct. Yeah, okay.
Sorry, I thought you had. Sorry.
Well, yeah, it really is. So this is a down follow-up question to what Fenton just asked before. So I was thinking about this when I read this paper, and I'm thinking, so we're taking a system that's been developed for regional councils, but how much interface do we have, and data sharing and so forth, do we have with regional councils versus how much we have with TLAs? And I would have thought that but I don't know, I would have thought the primary thing was being able to interface with our TLAs here, and that was more important for us as a longer term game than to interface with other regional councils. So tell me I've got that wrong.
I believe you have that wrong. I can provide some context if you like. I've been involved with shared services for some time now, and there are 2 types of shared services that regional councils can participate in. One, I believe, is with your neighbours, That's predominantly in the space of corporate services, where you're performing the same thing, i.e. IT, finance, rating, document management, that sort of thing. Then regional councils have their resource management function, and that has no alignment at all with TLAs. So we're best to align with the others in the regional sector who also deal with the RMA and the resource management functions, and that is where our similarities lie. So in our ICT decision making, we've pretty much delineated when we are deciding what is the best option moving forward for shared service opportunities. If it's related to the resource management functions of this council, we look to the regional sector to collaborate and share. If it's to do with corporate services or corporate systems, the ones I just mentioned, then we would certainly look to the Napier City Hastings district and what opportunities are provided there. Cool. So moving on to the initiation process, this has been undertaken over the last few months to bring us where we are today. So effectively, we had to do some project initiation and planning to bring the business case together and all of the other artefacts that were required in order to come up with a sensible proposal to move forward. So we ran some introductory workshops. That was attended by both RSHL staff, so real-world regional council workers, as well as Datacom technical experts. And they sat down with our staff, explained to them what the system done, how it worked, and provided lots and lots of lessons learnt and mistakes and bridges burnt, I suppose you could say, sort of stories from the front lines from these 6 other regional councils. So it really got our entire business embedded in what this project was and reinforced while we're doing it. And at the same time, we've been doing, as I say, the sort of commercial and project management sides of this, which has been the development of project initiation documents. So documenting exactly how we're going to run this project, how we're going to resource this project, how we're going to fund this project. Alongside that is obviously commercials. We would have an end user license agreement for the subscription effectively with RSHL, the agreement to use the software ongoing, and also a professional services contract with Datacom, so a statement of work for the time and materials to help implement this solution. And that has resulted in this business case that we're here to discuss today.
Right, so I'll just give you a brief overview of what is being proposed, and certainly for the first, for what's in front of you today and what we're seeking approval for today is really that the first 4 bullet points here. So our development of IRIS will begin with resource consent processing, compliance monitoring, incident management and enforcement. And those are the 4 key activities that we intend to bring forward and have up and running by the middle of next year through the IRIS system. The next 2 activities that we've actually signalled we believe would significantly benefit from integration with IRIS are land management and biosecurity. But we also recognise, having discussed with some of the owners of RSHL and with Datacom, that there's actually potential for implementation of this system right across the entire range of resource management functions and activities, including policy development, but also importantly for us, well, for our council, a centralised contact database, which is something that we don't currently have, and we've been looking to develop for quite a while. But rather than have it as yet another standalone database or another standalone system, this could be integrated directly into IRIS as well.
Just to clarify there, Liz, one of the first cabs off the rank with IRIS is to set it up to be the single authoritative source of contacts for this organisation. So that will be happening in very early on in this project, before we even get to resource consents and compliance. People and locations are the key piece of data we need to operate off.
The different functions you've got listed there in those 6 bullet points, from my understanding at the moment, they're sort of all done. Everyone does has their own database and systems and whatever it is they're using. But the intention is that the 6 bullet points will all be able to talk to each other at the end once the system's implemented.
Correct. They will be effectively, if you think of it as a website, it'll be 6 tabs in one location.
Thomas, assuming under managing resource consent compliance, that would include FEMS? It will handle?
Yes, yes. I'm sorry. Look, I've just got a couple of slides now on the benefits and the costs, and these are all taken from the business case, so I'm not sure how much you want me to go through each of those, but broadly speaking, you know, we've identified there's some qualitative benefits. In fact, there's a number of qualitative benefits, and there's a number of quantitative ones as well in terms of costs. So, but I think if we want to look at it from a high level perspective, there's benefits to our customers, our ratepayers, our consent applicants, and there's also benefit to the organisation itself. And so the business case has actually set all those out, and I'm not going to perhaps address each of them individually unless you'd like me to clarify any. And there they are. I mean, yeah, as we said, there's a number of organisational benefits, and and I'll give you just one tangible example. At the moment, we bill everyone right now for their compliance for the year that we're just finishing, the financial year that we're just finishing. And I know a number of people, particularly some of our large customers, would prefer billing through the year or you know, an incremental billing rather than one large bill. And Iris system will enable us to be able to do that. So it would actually improve our cash flow as well, and there's a number of other flow-on benefits to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to ask a few questions about that table and the expected savings thereon, and just to be clear as to the functions that you see as essentially disappearing from current complements, and the knowledge around, for example, page 49, yeah, out there. So you've identified, forgive me, I'm always a little cynical about projected savings never appearing. So the question is, are they, if you like, people sitting in front of a screen loading stuff, as opposed to a range of compliance and consent management? Perhaps, Liz, you might have a better picture of that.
Actually, Councillor, they're both, really. So there will be, and I say that because, and particularly if you're looking at the likes of compliance, you'll be able to get people that will be entering information straight into Iris when they're standing in the paddock looking at
so the
at the ball
efficiencies
or
you're
whatever.
seeing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I just follow this through then with this question? Given our knowledge around changes to the whole consenting compliance environment, for example, FEMPS, you know, a large pipeline of those coming through. So we've got an inevitable shift and increase in volumes. If you think about Havelock North Water, the change in intensity of around any particular consent, so you've got a whole change in regime taking place. Can you tell me that, or should there be another column that identifies those changes and obvious increase in resources and costs resulting versus these changes? So this is on current state. What does the future look like in a year's time? And see, I'll be singing the song next year when you cannot actually demonstrate this. I'm saying, oh, what happened?
Yes, Councillor, I'd refer you to page 5, if I could, page 5. And there's a table there, 5 and 6, and my understanding on this is that we've got the current establishment of FTEs, and then that moves to a forecast resourcing in line with all those additional consent and compliance numbers and plan change 6 and additional servicing that you were picking up on. So the bottom line there is, if you have a look at that, but currently, today, we have 14.3 FTEs, and with all this additional throughput and work and complexity, it's been assessed that there will be a request, or there would need to be a request in front of council to take the 14 FTEs up to 20 to 23, and they're analysed there on the areas that they would be requested. And if you then go to the table that you were looking at before, Councillor, which was on page 11, where we've got current systems, that's the current forecast. Okay, so you start from a current forecast, and then IRIS would provide efficiencies to enable us to reduce our request through the LTP.
To the tune of 360,000.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sorry, just one finally. You've got an additional cost. So the request, that's the cost avoidance is 360. The request will be an increase to 18.45 FTEs or vicinity thereof. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Plus, you've got a operational cost of 200 and something thousand. So, do we anticipate your request in the long-term plan as a consequence of this new system to be, and of the new regime, to be in the vicinity of $400,000 to $500,000 on the bottom line for this whole environment, staff and tools?
So what we'll be anticipating is that, based on this assessment here, that we will be looking in the long-term plan next year to increase our capacity up to 18.45 full-time equivalent over the course of certainly probably the third year of the long-term plan, and then beyond that as well. So that would be factored in together with the annual ongoing OPEX costs as well. What the business case highlights is that we actually need to probably save about, or the benefits of this need to equate to about $465,000 per annum in either cost avoidance or increased revenue, and which is about $115,000 over the amount that we've identified as a cost, which is $352,000. So what we're saying there is that we've assessed that the benefits from this annually more than cater for the costs required.
And also contribute 115,000 towards any increase in FTE numbers for significantly increased volumes of work.
Thank you. Your presentation's good, and you've brought us on the journey with previous presentations. I'm reasonably relaxed. I have a couple of questions. One, and I see that your GPS points when you're out in the field. So, what is the significance of a large area of the Hawke's Bay region is out of range with coverage for mobile service? And if you answer that, and then I'll go to my next one.
So the mobile technologies will be implementing what they call offline-online technologies, so they can capture data while they are off the grid effectively, and then when they come back into range, they will synchronise that data back up.
Thank you. And in terms of the risks, there's a two-part question. What guarantee have we got that this cost is it is what it is? And because whenever I see IT systems implemented in other businesses, the costs just seem to escalate, and there's, things evolve. So, what's your contingency? And also, is this IRIS insurable, long-term insurable, as in on our balance sheet, on our asset register, or is it something intangible? How do we get around that?
It's an intangible asset which is depreciated over a 10-year time frame, just like any other software. Yeah.
Can you insure it? That works?
Well, we're absolutely positive it does. I mean, we're very lucky in this one because six councils have already got it, and it's already up and running. And as far as keeping the price to the 1.1 million, it all comes down to specification of the functionality required. In my opinion, there can be huge escalation where people don't specify exactly what they want, and then they need more. My team has just gone over this for months and months and months. So I would say that under Carl's management, there'll be absolutely no escalation.
Yeah, just sort of
Paul-
to wrap.
When did you say you were? Oh, Paul, I'll hold you that to next week, Paul.
So just to sort of reiterate around that risk, I think in reality, IT here, sort of Regional Council, has got a proven track record of sticking to scope, sticking to budget, and sticking to timelines. We've spent a lot of time forecasting the scope, the resource requirements, the time and materials requirements from Datacom for this project. Quite a unique aspect of this project is having the other 6 regional councils who've been there, done that, and they have helped us forecast for some months. So it is as accurate as we could possibly get, and we have built in contingency. An example there is we've factored in up to 5.5 FTEs of backfill, and initially we were only engaging 4. So we can use the bit of buffer there for either more backfill, or they may be more suitable to outsource. If there's a specialised task that's a week long, we may use that funding for outsourcing. But we absolutely have a good contingency to deliver on budget.
Just my insurance question. So what if something goes wrong and we're in a service providing business here? So can you insure against it going wrong? Is it something that we should be considering in the audit and risk?
That would be business continuance. So yes, we do have a business continuance for a disaster, and software going down would be in the nature of a disaster. But that's why I mean, we're actually more of a risk with our current system, aren't we? Because it's a homegrown system. We've only got one person supporting it, so we're actually more risk with our current system.
Thank you, Chair. I have a number of questions. First off, just a function one, because it's something that's got me excited over a while. Is it searchable? Will this database be searchable for have searchable online searchable for resource consents, like in terms of I can go and search by the owner of resource consents, the type of resource consents that they may hold or may not hold, the volumes of, say, for example, the water that they have for water take, and their expiry dates?
To the best of my knowledge, we already have that, and we wouldn't discontinue that service with the replacement of the current regulatory system. So you can already go online. I'm not sure you can search for private details, as in the holder's name, but you can absolutely look from a spatial perspective, zoom in on a piece of a river, see dots that indicate resource consents.
That's not quite what I mean. I mean, so you can go in with a drop down menu and go, I want to know resource consents that are due to expire, that are water takes in the Tutaikuri catchment in the next 3 years, for example.
Absolutely possible.
Yeah. Okay, because that's what I'm after. I'm not after dots on a map, because that's confusing. The other question, obviously this is a system in place in other regions, so they've been well tested through there. This has not been implemented all over the country at the same time.
Yes, so its first implementation was in Northland 4 years ago, and it's been progressively rolled out since, with Horizons in the Manawatu area being the last.
Cool, so they found all the bugs.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, okay. Now the other one, you use a word different word than I do, I think, is the transfer of the current information we've got holding on all our different databases all over the place. Are you looking at doing that in terms of once all that information is entered into the new system, are you looking at implementing the new system in terms of a big bang, just doing it all at once? Or are you going to be running dual systems for a while to test to make sure that everything's running correctly? Or are you going to do like a smaller sample area to make sure that it works correctly?
We will be switching the old system off the day we switch the new system on.
Okay, so big bang, that's what I described it as. Welcome to NovaPay, you know, you go, that's what they did, and you do got to want it. Then I'll go to page 16, or what's page 54, the project deliverables. I'm just curious to know how often we'll get reports back on that, just to know when you've met those milestones.
Absolutely up to you guys. Just let us know how you want us to feed that back. I had thought the corporate or financial and risk committee could be a useful one, but absolutely happy to report back as and when you desire.
You know, I mean, I'd be happy with that sort of frequency, and obviously if anything that crops up that, you know, we should know about, then you let us know. Yeah.
Carl, have you finished your presentation?
Up to you guys.
Yes, we have.
I am going to move from the chair that we accept these recommendations. Do I have a seconder? I have a whole bunch of all the hands. You're going to win this battle, aren't you? We'll take Neil, since he's asked the most questions as the seconder. I'll take my right to speak first. So, Carl, you seem like a really smart guy to me, and this raft of people you've got down there seem like really smart people. This is your area of expertise, and it's certainly not mine. I had to buy my 13-year-old boy a Mac so he could tell me how to work my Mac. So, I am, and all these councillors around here are heavily relying on your competence and your expertise and the expertise and competence of your staff to have got this right, because as I think Councillor Hewitt pointed out, we've so often over the last, how long is it, 20 years, seen these things go wrong. So I'm really pleased that you've really looked at this hard. I'm pleased that we are not leading edge here, that we're not trying to be the front runners, and that Northland and Horizon have taken it, and I'm sure that you've got the big tick from them. You're going to nod on that one? You've got the big tick from them, they love it. So on that basis, and on the basis of your recommendation, the recommendation of your bosses, I would definitely support this. Neil.
Oh, I just think it was a very well presented business plan, and well done. It's thorough, and I'm sure the outcomes will be achieved.
Are there any other speakers? Paul.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, I mean, I know I gave you guys a bit of a hard time about not going through the tenders committee, but at the end of the day, I think it's a clever move to pick up something that's off the shelf that's been developed by regional councils for regional councils. I really like the fact that that's basically local procurement. I think that's really excellent. And this is certainly something that needs to be done. It was a big part of the efficiency review that we received recently in terms of the way that our information systems were working. And I'm really, really pleased to see this. It was, I think it's a great case. So, yeah.
Any more speakers? All those in favour? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. There you go.
So, Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, we're Councillor Bailey, we're not going to call it Big Bang, we're going to call it smooth transition.
Thank you, Carl. And thanks for your team coming along to support you.
Thanks, Carl.
Right. Now, we have got 1 hour. We're going to finish at 3, guys. So, item 10. We should get Peter Bevan to do this, really, but
Really nice job.
so
No, just commenting it was significant with all the staff there. It was quite
yeah, no, he did a lovely job. Yeah, he did.
really nice.
Yeah. Oh, so Mr. Hanson, you're on, so it's going to be quick, I guess.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the brevity is my middle name, so the first part of this was simply an adoption of the terms of reference that have been in play for a not insignificant period of time through the term of the Coastal Strategy project. They've actually been adopted in March and May by both Hastings and Napier, and it's a formality that stems out of probably Mike 80s and my changeover to just go through the formal adoption on behalf of HBRC. And probably the relevant part of this paper was a quick discussion between myself and Councillor Bevan about the project and where we're at. So
And is Councillor Bevan happy?
I think he's extremely happy.
I'm looking at you. I'm looking down here, not at you.
The email
You've
last
been
night-
very unhappy about things today.
Email last night said that it was fine, I think. But
You've got a question, have you?
I've got a question. We're happy to move as it is, but just around the names. Obviously, this is going to outlive this term of council. Quite simply, each council will put up its representatives if and as they change, etc.
And that was the process of this. It reflects the change from the previous council, so it would be
Happy
just
to
the
move
same
them,
process.
Do we have a seconder? Seconder? Just to speak, Peter?
Oh no, I think. Well, yes,
Oh, no,
yes, I
yes,
do.
why
Yes, I
don't
do. Then okay. Do I get 5 minutes? Do I?
No,
Chair?
you don't.
I've got a PowerPoint.
We'll
I've got
send
a
you back to
PowerPoint to
Wyral
come up.
really quick.
All I'd say is, it's a very positive piece of work. It's an incredibly complex
amazing.
and challenging issue that faces all of us. I look at what's happening in Mahia at the moment. So the blowhole's dropped out again. Rocket Lab is watching with bated breath because if that road goes, I'm not sure they can get a 10-metre rocket through the other road. So, and that's just purely from coastal erosion. So, you know, this is bigger than the piece we're talking about here. But I commend the people that are working hard on this and trying to make some sense out of it and keep up the good work.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to make comment about the consultation process that's been used with the community. I think if all the consultation processes I've seen being used by the councils here in Hawke's Bay, this would be one of the best that I've seen. There's certain things that could be tweaked on it, but they have no great consequences. But I think, you know, without the leadership of Councillor Bevan, things may have turned out differently, but I'd just like to say thank you to Councillor Bevan. It's certainly one of the best processes I've been involved in.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Are you going to talk, are you? After all these adulations.
Well, I'll talk briefly, Chair. Really, as much as anything, this is an opportunity for Graham and myself to give the council just a little bit of an update on where the process is at. And Graham will cover some things, but I'll perhaps try and give you a bit of an overview first. You're aware that this has been a 2.5-year process so far. We started with accumulating the data which identified the hazards and the risks for inundation, erosion and tsunami as a result of global warming and sea level rise. Once we had that, we then had to work out a framework for response, and what we decided to do as a joint committee was to divide the coast into two pieces, coast, Port North, Port South, and to try and turn this into a bottom-up process, if you like, by going out into the communities that were affected by this and ask them to put representatives up onto the two cells that had been formed, and then they become the ones that will make the recommendations back to the joint committee and then on to the three councils that are involved. So just to give you a very brief heads up on the process that those two panels have gone through. Basically what we've done is given them the data, the information that we accumulated over the first 2 years. We then brainstormed options. Well, we looked at each of the cells, Port North and Port South, and decided which units within each cell were a priority for developing a long-term plan. Don't forget, under the coastal plans, it's got to be a 100-year plan. Then they brain celled for each of those units as to what the options were for short, medium and long-term strategies. We had to then turn those options into adaptive pathways that would get us over the 100-year period. We then had to, and that's the point we're up to now, then we're going to have to assess each of the options or pathways that are available against a set of pre-agreed criteria, and once we've done that, then we layer in the whole factor of what is this going to cost, and that might change the options that are preferred as a consequence. So we're sort of 2/3 of the way through that, halfway through that process now, and the plan is to be finished by the end of this year. It's been an incredibly time-consuming process, I suppose, and that's what happens when you consult with the community like this. And of course there are two cells operating concurrently, which doubles the amount of work. So it is time consuming, but it's actually quite rewarding to see people giving up their own time to represent their communities. We've had 2 meetings on a Friday night, full attendances, 5 to 8, really amazing.
Did amaze me when you did it.
And yes, one of them was a test night, so, and everybody turned up and participated. So it's, you know, it's heartening to see the commitment that the community's made, and our own staff, because they had to come here as well, and there's a whole lot of them that probably need to be mentioned as well. There's Graham, who of course has taken over from Mike, but there's Rena Douglas, Craig Goodyear, Monique Thompson and Gary Clode, and they all turned up to all of these meetings. And
did you shout?
Yeah. Did I shout?
Just sandwiches. Friday night.
On 2 Friday nights. So I think all of the, you know, I think from a participatory aspect, this has been a really successful project and people have committed to it pretty well. We've had 2 community feedback meetings, and one for each cell, and we'll have 2 more before the process is completed. So that's a sort of an overview for Graham to be able to talk to.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Before I put the motion, I just want to acknowledge your leadership in this too. You've done a fantastic job. I don't want to get a too swelled head, but because I am worried that the shells you brought back for Lily from the Northland beaches might have caused to erosion up there. Such a large shell bag. But no, you have actually done a fantastic job, and I think it's your leadership that's brought this together. It's proof that we need to put the right people in the right jobs. So well done. On that, I'll move. Fenton, do you wish to wind up? We'll move the motion to accept the terms of reference. All those in favour? Aye. Second, opposed? It's carried. We will. No. We've done it, mate. We're done. It was simple. Taking us red.
He spent time on
Graham, we knew. The terms of reference. You didn't really want to go right through the terms of reference, did you?
No, it wasn't that. It was just a sort of a presentation associated with Peter's explanation of what we've done and why, an example.
Made it very clear. Peter did such a long speech, I thought it was over. Okay, we've moved now anyway. We've moved on. Thank you, Graham. Thank you for sitting there so diligently. Get up to Wire and fix those problems up there, please. Item 11. Who's going to do the regional? I wasn't there.
I wasn't there either, Mr. Chairman, but if anyone's got any questions, I'll attempt to answer them.
Who was there?
Take it as read, Chair.
Well, I'd have to.
Pretty straightforward.
Was there anything? Who was there? Was there anything?
I see. It was actually a meeting that I anticipated that we might have some problems with, particularly in relation to the outstanding water bodies issue. But in reality, the meeting went very smoothly, and there was pretty much consensus on the outcomes.
Okay.
So I'm prepared to move.
Seconder, Alan's already talked. Do you wish to talk? Paul, you were there. You want to talk? All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Accept the paper. Against? We accept that. The Regional Planning Committee. Transport, sorry. Alan, that's you, I think.
Very straightforward meeting. We're working along the mid-term review of the Regional Land Transport Plan and made some progress there. But it's, pretty straightforward. Progress, no problems to report.
You got a question, Paul?
Yeah, just a question, Chair. Ellen, can you just fill me in a bit about Mrs. Crispin's deputation, about what was discussed there and the outcome of that was? Well, the Crispins are very enthusiastic submitters, and their concerns related to noise issues arising from the expressway as it traverses through or up against the Piramai and other areas there. They did get one positive outcome from that, an undertaking by NZTA that they would resurface 500 metres in asphalt, in other words a low noise surface, replacing the chip surface that was there before. But never to give in or be satisfied. I've got to attend a meeting with Mr. Crispin and his group in Napier tomorrow afternoon for the next request.
They did very well in their first one, didn't they?
They did. But there's no press. But they'll probably don't report me. Give them an inch. They want a mile.
Yeah, they did very well. Alan, will you move? You'll move. Do we have a second up? Have a seconder. Do you wish to, Alan's spoken, do you wish to speak, Peter? Anyone else wish to speak? All those in favour of accepting the Transport Committee's report? Aye, aye. Against? Carried. Recommendations from the Hearings Committee. Is that you, Liz?
Oh, so
Councillor Bevan.
I'll speak very briefly to that, Chair. So the Hearings Committee met earlier this month. We had a look at the potential hearings that might be coming up as a result of resource consent applications. We also had a presentation which was really good, which I think is going to be done at the next RPC meeting, which runs through the whole resource consent application and compliance process, and it's a really good presentation, and I certainly recommend it to everybody. And we had a revised terms of reference, which, as you are all aware, we discussed this morning, and we have a bit of a problem with number 3 on page 71. And I don't know, Alan, if you had a chance to think about how you might revise it.
Well, yes. I mean, what you could say is that on 3, after the end of the first sentence, pursuant to, etc., the council may request the committee on a case-by-case basis, and then 3.1 and 3.2. But then there's note 1 down the bottom, which says, for the avoidance of doubt, the Hearings Committee has not delegated functions, powers and duties, etc. And you perhaps could say, for the further avoidance of doubt, it is not intended that the Hearings Committee should be delegated to hear long-term plan, annual plan or transport plan special consultations. No, I think that would fix it.
Did you get all that, Liz?
Yeah, well, I'll get it. We can ensure that we get it completely off Councillor Dick. Yeah.
We better make that change. We'll make that change with staff
So
executive.
with those changes, Chair,
No, well, one more change.
Can we just make one more, please?
Group manager, external relations, not regions.
It's a
Does it-
typo over the
okay.
page. Yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
Now you can have your. With those
so
changes.
with those changes, I'm happy to move, Chair.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second. Councillor Dick. Any? Do you want to speak to it? Do you wish to speak to it?
No.
Anyone else wish to speak to it? Okay, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Recommendation of the Hearings Committee. Fixing the common seal. Sorry. Fenton's moved.
I'm happy to second.
And we've got a seconder. Anyone wish to speak? All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Staff work program. We always have a few little comments. Something about wire, is it? Fenton,
Page
on
77, well, it is actually. Funny you should say that, Chair.
Yeah, you cheer me up.
Land Science, number 50, the SMAP, continues to be rolled out in Northern Hawke's Bay. Can you give us a bit of a, like, what's left? How much of the region's left, do you know? Not that it really matters, offline would be fine.
So that's an Ian Maxwell question, so we will have to get that to you
I
offline.
like asking Graham those questions.
Yeah.
And
Now
the,
this goes
He's got his glasses, he can hear you.
this is
Yeah.
this is one for Graham with his glasses on. Page number 9.
Have you got a presentation there, Graham?
95 on number 95, Chair, on page 79. Regional rabbit blood sampling and night count line monitoring will be underway. Are we talking about the rollout of the Khaleesi, or what's that about? We just want to make sure the rabbits are healthy. Is that what we're doing? Or? Number 95 on page 79.
Mine too. You got a question? That means he doesn't know. Yep, he'll come back to you. We've got Debbie first and then you, Peter.
Thank you. Number 61, page 77. Gans, I'm not sure if that's you or not. Pronga Downstream Maratiki Priority Catchment Community. I presume that's meeting in there, and I'm just wondering if I can be advised of it to come and join you.
We can note that. I'm sorry, and look, apologies from Mr. Maxwell, but he and Mr. Palmer are both on at the water inquiry this afternoon. Mr. Palmer's on now. So,
Thanks.
I think we should get a video of that. Oh, Peter, sorry. Yeah, and
Yeah,
then
Chair,
back to
so
you,
my
Paul.
question relates to myrtle rust and whether we're doing any monitoring or whether there's been any discoveries of it in Hawke's Bay and whether we are prepared and ready to take whatever actions we need to take.
The one thing is, are you washing your shoes as you return from the far north? Do we? I guess we're just going to think about that. There's no discoveries here, is there?
Sorry?
There's no discoveries.
No, not.
I understand staff are involved in the nationally related program in terms of the understanding of myrtle rust and what it is and what you do with it within the region. I understand at the moment there's none in the region, but again, I can get Campbell to give you an update in respect of, you know, sort of the intimate detail of what's being done.
I think it might be quite helpful if we just had a brief of some sort on what steps we, you know, because it's a matter of
Time.
not whether it gets here, but when. And I think it might be quite helpful for us to know what steps we are putting in place to take.
We'll add that to
when
the
it's
agenda for the ENS on the 12th.
Yep, that'd be good.
Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Number 68 on page 78. I'm just curious to know what the UNISO gastronomy designation application is about. That does sound edible.
I could talk about it.
Thanks, Councillor. This is a initiative that's been put to the region for the region to go after and secure a UNESCO designation, and it's in line. There are a number of designations around creative cities, art cities, and so this one would focus on our gastronomy attributes, our ability to produce fine food. It's one that's been circling around the TLAs as well as ourselves, and the conversation is this perhaps an area that we should step up and lead in as a regional body. And so there was originally a timeline to see if this could be up and running for a 2017 application, but it's more likely to be an application for next year. So we're in preliminary meeting stages on that point.
Hawke's Bay Tourism presented to us on it, you may not recall.
No.
And it is a really big deal. when
Yeah,
you
I
get one of
imagine
these.
it is, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. There's further questions?
These things come up every 10 years.
Yeah.
The bank account number is in Nigeria.
That's right. Any other one, Paul?
Yep. More a comment than a question, I suppose. Number 83 on page 79. Different plantings around the area that have been going on this autumn season. I've been to a number of them. The comment at the end there, good public attendance, absolutely excellent public attendance, according to the staff that I've spoken to. Certainly up from recent years, which presents some challenges because they keep on running out of trees, but they never run out of sausages, so that's not quite so bad. And then number 87, again on page 79, the planting at Tutera on the 15th. I've organised for a bus to be going up there from Napier to help citizens get up there and help out with the planting. TK's organising all that, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Hope it's more successful than Blues planting last year. Lost 95. Okay, any other issues? Otherwise, do we have someone to move to accept the work program? Fenton? Paul? Any discussion, further discussion? Otherwise, all those in favour? Oh,
Yeah, I just wanted to add with regard to the planting programs, the great work the staff have been putting into those. I've had a number of comments back from different members of the public and the partners that we're organising with about how fantastic they have been to work with. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. All those in favour? Aye. Against? We accept it. Right, so we are on to Chairman's Monthly Report. I did send it in, but it's disappeared. Oh, have you? I haven't got a copy. Are there any questions? I had a easy month. Debbie.
Thank you. This is, you know, just a bit of a diary, which, in terms of where I can have input, the staff report is what's coming up, you know, in the month ahead, and it would be quite helpful to just have a signal of any significant things that you've got coming up in the next month, so that you know, councillors may wish to have an input into.
You know, you actually raised that before, and I said I'd attend to it. I'm really sorry about that. So I'm happy that my diary, which Diane develops, and I'm getting better at it. She said Alan's outstandingly good, and then I should be able to improve my skills. But I'm happy for you to have that. So you want to talk to her about that. Most of these things are planned in advance. Most of them are. So they're on that diary, and I'm happy to have a look at that.
Would be quite helpful in terms of us all feeding into what's coming up. But also the councillor diary is not really that helpful to me, I don't find, because it just misses so much out. I mean, one day you said to me you were off down to something in Central Hawke's Bay at the Hearts, and it had missed my diary completely, which I was really disappointed about. So if we had a little bit more, we might sort of cross-pollinate a bit more.
Okay, we're going to try and do that. I'll talk to Diane how we do that, because there are things like the heart one, and I'm not being critical here, so don't think I am, but I was quite disappointed yesterday at Waipatu that it was only Paul and I there. I know it's really hard for you and Fenton, so because you've travelled from such a long way, and it's something also I want to address going forward. You know, how do we make that easier for you to do that? Because it's so difficult for you. But it was a really
Buy them a house.
it was a really good. There's lots of things that I go to and I think, hell, this is fantastic. You know, people would pay to be here, like yesterday. It was quite sensational, and yet we were well represented, but we could have been a little bit better represented, I thought. So there's things like that, and there's the I don't want to go on here, but little things like the Hawke's Bay AMP Showgrounds are putting the Tamona name back in, and you know, I've been instrumental in talking them into that, and it's going to be a big deal. And once they've embraced it, you've got the Nelson family embracing it, and because you know their great grandfather was the Tamona great grandfather's best, you know, real close friends. And the story is quite sensational, how Tamona's lost the land, and you may not know the story, but it's all going to get told this week. And the Nelsons have really embraced it, and they've really embraced the fact that they're going to go onto the marae and do the big porphyry. And so those sort of things are quite rare, and they're really good to be there. So I just hope some of you can turn up to that, even though it's not directly linked to us. Yeah, well, I go into my diary, and I'm happy for you to look at it.
It didn't hit my diary until, I don't know, quite late.
Yeah, I don't know why that's happened, because we planned it out 2 weeks before. Don't know. I need to think about how we... I'll put that... Graham, he's a very good organiser, I've found. We'll delegate that to him to make sure that communication... We've loved that PowerPoint. I noticed it stayed up there, and we have admired it from a distance. That's what we were worried about. Is there anything else on here? I don't think there is really.
Yes, on the 22nd of June.
22nd, yeah. When
this Chinese lady came to town. Is that the time that your wife went overseas?
Chinese partner in town. Yeah. Perhaps I should just share with you, got a little bit of time. So I have a company in China that this is quite interesting. My partner in China is the biggest produce operator in China. He also owns 24% of Turners and Growers, so it gives you an indication he's a serious Chinese player, and can have a serious impact on our region. And he comes over once every 2 months and stays with me, and we go to China and stay with him. But you know, having these serious players come to our region is good for us. You know, they're always looking around, and he's not one of the pretending ones that we get from the delegations. This is a serious guy with a checkbook. So I do.
Does he want a dam?
I haven't asked him, but it does tend to want a return on his investment. Anyway, yeah, Chinese partner. The other one thing that Sir Graham Avery, he's having a huge impact on our region, and I do tend to meet him every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. He's keen to try and talk to the treaty partners, and I've talked to James. I know it's completely off the kaupapa, but you know, this when the 9 treaty partners meet, it's just with us. That's that other post-amalgamation kind of view of the world. It's actually a unique opportunity to get these people in the same room, and we're just talking about important but singular issues, and how can we widen that a little bit because it's an opportunity for us to talk to the 9 treaty partners when they're all in the room. So James and I are trying to get our head around how we do something like that. Question? Thank you. Seconder?
You're actually allowed to move your own report, you
know. No, and I'm going to leave it to you to do it. Okay, moving to seconder. All those in favour of accepting the chairman's report? That's carried. So we have items not on the agenda. Sorry? Oh, that was you, Mike.
Yeah, just carrying on from Chairman's remarks about Waipatu yesterday. The thought was from Ngāti Kahungunu Incorporated that they would formally welcome the new CEO, and that was done in the speeches, which were mainly in Māori, were just indicating that they hope that this is the start of a new and better relationship of working together. Toro was one of the speakers and I was the other from our side, and I did reflect on Ngāhiwi meeting the Pope, and I said to him that the story went around Pakipak, where he lives, that the Pope asked him his name and he said Ngāhiwi Te Mona, and the Pope said, well, just looking at you, I thought your name was Satan.
He actually said that on the 4th. In Māori, fortunately.
The word for Satan in Māori is Heretaunga, and got a laugh from Ngāhiwi anyway.
There's no further questions on that. So, Paul, you had something.
Yeah, I had two issues that I wanted to raise. We had a meeting, Neil and I and Liz and James had a meeting with Bill Dalton and some of the staff from the Napier City Council with respect to just going over the discharge in the estuary of the sewage, the recent discharge in the estuary of the sewage. I found it a really helpful meeting in terms of Napier City Council seems to have come on board with the fact that discharges of sewage into the estuary is actually unacceptable, and that they're working on a plan to stop that happening in future as much as they possibly can. And I was happy to accept their word on that, and that they are going through and doing some modelling on their stormwater, wastewater systems to work out where everything's going and why it's not going where it should be, and then they'll make some plans from there. Can I just ask why I wasn't there? I'm not sure, Alan. I understood that you'd been invited.
Yeah, you had accepted the invitation, Councillor. I did try to call you.
Are there any other meetings scheduled in the future with Napier City Council?
There was discussion about having regular, if not necessarily frequent meetings.
Not one coming up soon?
No.
Okay, well, here's my fault.
Thank you, Paul. You have another one?
Pollution hotline, yeah. One of the things that could appear, listening to the submissions from a couple of people during the long-term plan, and also sitting through some of the discussion that I could understand at the Māori committee meeting last week was how a lot of the members of the public have got concerns about pollution issues that get them worked up, and they report it to the regional council, and then no one seems to hear about what actually happens, what actions are taken on those particular issues. I mentioned it to James the other day, and he said that it would be easy enough for him to prepare a report which basically lists anyone who contacts the pollution hotline and what they're ringing about, and then just a very quick what action's being taken, whether it's something we can actually do, whether it's something in train, or whatever it is. Pretty much like, say, for example, as much information as we get from the Lagorma request report. And he's quite happy to prepare that, and he was thinking about having that go to the ENS committee.
Yeah, I know you're not supposed to debate, but one instance there was tar dripping from the truck outside the gymnasium in Waipak. Been doing it for a couple of days according to the staff. I rang the regional council and it was within an hour it was stopped.
Yeah, I found them to be very good too, except on weekends when I got rung back by the fire brigade. But never mind. I just want a quick update on the meeting in Mahia, or more purely Opatama. I thought it was a particularly good meeting. It was run in fine style. I don't think there was any difficult to take any minutes. There was certainly no agenda. But we all had a really great time, and it epitomised the need to do these meetings in the regions. The locals were very forceful and very vocal, and they got into us, and they loved us and hated us at the same time. But what it did highlight to me was that there are a huge number of small issues in our region that's quite difficult for us to get. Everyone's got a niggle and a genuine one around in their own ruhi, and it's quite difficult for our organisation to deal with them all. But I'm just thankful that Graham is now onto all of the issues that were raised and is going to go to Wairoa for one day and sort them all out. So that's good. But it was a particularly good meeting. I just want to raise formally, and I know I raised it this morning, about Roy's Hill, and I would like the staff to Roy's Hill dump, the old Roy's Hill dump. I would like, as a risk, for us to do a paper. I don't mean a long paper, something that just says what is the history of it. When they just filled it all in, did they do anything about looking at any terrible products that I know did go into it? And what do we see as the risks, and how are we mitigating it now? I know that we have some sensors around, but are we doing everything that we need to do to ensure that there is no big risk to our community from that old dump site? If there are no other items, thank you very much for your attendance. We'll call the meeting. Yeah, just did. That's a worry. It's kind of short term. Yes, we did at the beginning. Yeah. And before we call it, just I know we thank you, Paul, and thank you very much for your service. Been greatly appreciated. Yeah, that's right. No. Paul, on his last thing, is going to just sit and listen to Graham's PowerPoint. That's what he's volunteered to do. So,
well, Mr. Chairman, I mean,
I'll still be here. Meeting is closed. Yeah.